Today we celebrate Corpus Christi, the body and blood of Christ. We celebrate the Blessed Sacrament. We celebrate the Mass. We celebrate the sacrifice on the cross. And we remember the Last Supper. We go to Mass for many of us every day, for some of us every week, and we receive communion. Why does the Church want us to celebrate it in a special way today? For us to remember this sacrament that we are used to receiving. I think it is to remind us of what it really is, why it was given, and what it should mean to us. Christ chose a particular time to establish this sacrament on the Last Supper, the day before he died. He wanted to leave with his apostles a memorial of his love for them, because he knew he was going to die on the cross. He had to leave for them something to remind them of his last days and how much he loved them. If we read the incidents at the Last Supper again, we are reminded that they were at supper, the normal meal he would eat with them, but he did something special. Instead of just handing the food or the wine, he took the bread and said, "Take this and eat it. This is my body." And he took the wine and said, "Take it and drink it. This is my blood." John records for us in his gospel the teaching of Jesus about this same sacrament when he was preparing the people's minds for what was going to happen. He said, "My flesh is real food, my blood is real drink. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood lives in me, and I in him, and I will raise him up on the last day." He went on to say, "Unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Unless you eat the body of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you." And then at the Last Supper, after what he did, he told them, "Do this in remembrance of me." As St. Paul reminds us in the reading today, as often as we eat his body and drink his blood, we do it in his memory until he comes again. So this is a perpetual remembrance of Christ. The sacrifice on the cross and the sacrifice on the altar are one and the same sacrifice, except that Christ on the altar is present in the form of body and the bread and wine, whereas on the cross he was the bleeding victim. He bled and died for us. But what he gave us, which we do on the altar, is the same thing. Remember what this meant for the early apostles. Even though they used to go to the temple to pray with the other Jews, but they would find a way to go to the house of one of them for the breaking of the bread. That was something that marked them out from the rest of the people gathering to break the bread. This was their own special occasion. This was the recalling of their Master and Lord who suffered and died for them. So the Eucharist we celebrate is tied up with the suffering and death of Christ. The Church reminds us that we should partake of this Eucharist. Sometimes we find the attitude of, well, it doesn't really matter. I can be a very good Christian without the Eucharist. Sometimes also we find the attitude, well, let's go, let's take it, just that way. What attitude should we bring to the Eucharist? First and foremost, we should examine ourselves before we partake of it. What does it mean for us? St. Paul warns us and says, be careful. He who eats the bread and drinks the blood unworthily, he mentioned the word unworthily, drinks condemnation or eats condemnation. That is, it is not something we should just take that way, carelessly or perfunctorily. No, it is something we should examine ourselves and make sure we are in a state of mind for Christ coming to us. That's the reason why the church says we must receive the sacrament in a state of grace. We must be pleasing to God. We must be friends of God in order to partake of this gift of Christ. I am sure that none of us accepts gifts from our friends in any manner at all. We receive the gifts from our friends happily. We wouldn't receive them grudgingly, or someone with whom we are unhappy with and gives us gift to say, let me take it. No, we don't do that. We have a disposition when we receive gifts from our friends. We must prepare ourselves, not just when we get into the church, but the moment we are thinking about going to Mass, we think about what we are going to do. We think about the communion we are going to receive, and we start to place ourselves in a position that enables us to receive that Eucharist. And if we are conscious of any mortal sins, the church says, no, do not receive communion. Prepare yourself to receive communion. This is important for us. Participating in the communion brings us closer to Christ in a way that no other sacrament does. Because when we eat him and drink him, he lives in us. He becomes part of us. He becomes our life, and we become part of him. As we know, if you eat good food, you look good. If you eat junk food, you look junky. And if you don't eat at all, you look somehow. You know what I mean? When we eat Christ, when we share in the body and blood of Christ, we are supposed to reflect Christ. We are supposed to look like Christ. We are supposed to radiate Christ. We are supposed to let the world see Christ in us, because we are now one with Christ. Let us bear this in mind always. Nobody is a Christian for himself or for ourselves alone. We are Christians unto others. That is, however we live our lives as Christians is meant to radiate to others, to show Christ to others. Our participation in the mystery of the body and blood of Christ should also reflect what we think about Christ, what we understand about Christ, and what it means to be a Christian. We also know that whenever we enter a church where the body of Christ is displayed in the tabernacle, we have the light burning. And that is why we genuflect or we bow. We reverence Christ present in the Eucharist. Also, when we are on a journey from this world to the next, we are given the Eucharist as viaticum, the food that enables us to go on our journey. We are anointed and given this food of angels to enable us to pass from this life to the next. When we are sick, communion is brought to us to strengthen us, to enable us. By the grace of God, we recover. These are important moments in our lives when we participate in the body and blood of Christ. Let us say this. We should always endeavor to take part in the Eucharist. We should always try to feed on Christ that food he has given to us. We should always endeavor to be close to him, always, remembering that that Eucharist is tied to the suffering and death of Christ. It is tied to our salvation. It is a means to our salvation. So while we celebrate this Mass today, and remember especially this wonderful gift of Christ, we pray for the grace to always draw closer to Christ by participating in the Holy Eucharist.